Good evening. This is Derek Lane, your host of the Fast Lane podcast for success. Thanks for joining me, and studio audience once again. Thank you guys. It's quite enough. Right enough. Okay. Hey, listen, folks. Thank you so much for enjoying the Fast Lane the podcast series. Podcast for Success. Again, host Derek Lane. Check me out. iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Stitcher, FastLanePodcast.com. FastLanePodcast.com. Subscribe. A lot of interesting stuff. Good stories, good blogs. Anyway, tonight, I want to touch in a little bit of area of understanding where people are coming from. You know, in the communication area there. There's a thing there that's called submodalities, and what submodalities are, it's a reference point. It's how you reference things. It's a very simple. It basically goes back to the pleasure and pain principle. People do things to either experience pleasure, or they do things to move away from pain. So that's the motivation for people. And it's one or the other. There's no right, there's no wrong. It is just what it is. It's either one or the other. But the submodalities of moving toward or away from something. So how do you apply that, and why is it practical? Well, you know, with a lot of things, you understand people by questioning, asking questions. People will tell you what you want to know. If you ask the questions, and particularly if you ask the right questions, with again, the submodalities of pleasure and pain principles. Just as a reference, if you ask someone, why do you work? Why do you work for a living? One person may answer, well, I work for a living because I can buy things. I can have things. I need, a new car. I need new clothes. I want a bigger house, and that's why I work. Well, clearly that person is moving toward something, right? They work because they're trying to gain something. They see the pleasure and the benefits of working. You can ask someone else the same question. You get a totally different response. Why do you work? Why do I work? So I can get my bills paid. I don't get my truck taken away, my car taken away. I pay bills. That's what I do. Well, that's the pain principle. They work because they don't want to feel the pain of not having the things. So you can clearly see that there's two mental forces that are applied in the same, for the same reason. Why do you work? Ask any question. Ask any question. Why do you go out to dinner? Just something silly, stupid, whatever. Why do you go out to dinner? Well, the pleasure principle. Well, because I find cuisine is good. It tastes good. I like experiencing new things and new tastes and new cultures, and that's pleasurable. The next person, why do you go out to dinner? Well, because I don't want to starve to death. I need to eat. I got to eat something. I got to eat. That's the pain principle. See, it applies to everything. It applies to everything. And just know that that is submodalities. You elicit people's submodalities by simply asking them, why? Why? Why do you do this? Well, ultimately, that's what you need to know to understand someone's reason. So if you're in sales, this is a great tool to understand and to be able to use. If you're a car salesman, Well, what will this car do for you? Oh, it'll be so cool, man. I'll have a new car. It'll be great, and people will notice, and whatever. Pleasure, right? Pleasure. Why do you need a new car? Well, because my old one's about ready to break down. It's a piece of junk. I just got to have something dependable. See, folks, when you ask questions, you get responses. If you do nothing with those responses, you're not learning. You're not taking advantage of what's being put in front of you. When people say they need something dependable, when my old car is about ready to break down, you should be selling on that same principle. Well, this new, X Model 9.5 has been rated by Consumer Digest for being the most dependable. It has the greatest resale value because of its dependability. So that's what you do. You sell to the needs. Okay? If someone has that submodality of pain, you sell to the fact that with this purchase, their pain will be eased. If their submodality is with pleasure, you sell to the fact that this will provide pleasure. Oh man, this car has been rated to have the most comfortable interior. The sound system it's in the top 5 of all manufacturers, and the horsepower, blah 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 blah, all the creature comforts and things that they want to know about. The pleasure. Okay, when I state it like that, it sounds pretty awesome, right? It sounds pretty easy. Well, it is. And if you've not learned this, if no one's told you, this is a basic element of selling. It is understanding the simplest needs and then repeating it back. For those of you who know what neuro-linguistic programming is, that know a little bit about the science behind of neuro-linguistic programming, you know that you deal with the senses, 3 of which are the most predominant, your vision, your hearing, and your feeling. When you learn that, I'm not going to get into that tonight. It's way too involved and deeper than I want to touch on. But I want to put it out there and let you know that there are things that you can understand, things that you can learn that aren't the same. They're not the same rehash of the typical sell stuff that most people read and learn. Which, don't get me wrong, I'm not putting any of that down because it's all valuable. But this is something totally different. Neuro-linguistic programming is so different from anything that you've learned if you're not familiar with it. It gives you so many insights and tools of how to read people. It can be said that you can even manipulate people using this tool, because what you're doing is you're playing upon the senses. As I named them, the 3 senses, vision, hearing, and feeling. The subcomponents are internal and external. What you see physically, what you see in your mind. There's 2 aspects of vision. What you hear, in reality, and what you hear in your mind. 2 aspects of hearing. The auditory stage. Kinesthetic, what you feel, what you put your hands on, you feel, or what you feel in your gut. So when I say there's 3 components, there's actually 6 components, because they do come into play. When people say, yeah, I just got a great feeling about this. Well, it means totally something different than, this leather seat, feels really great. Okay? It means totally 2 different things. So you have to understand that. Same with, I could just see myself driving on the coastal highway with this. It means something totally different than, oh man, when my friends see me in this car, it's going to be great. The same principle, okay? Inner, outer principles. I'm not going to talk any more about that. There's plenty of resources out there that you can look up and go find, even who was it? Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins talks about neurolinguistic programming in his first book. It goes back, oh my God, what is it? Damn near 20 years now. But he is a student of neurolinguistic programming, and that's probably where I first learned it. But there's a lot of good speakers and authors on the subject. You can even look it up on YouTube. Anyway, submodalities, pleasure-pain principle, understanding the way that we communicate with each other, understanding the way that we learn things is paramount to your success. Pay attention. One of the biggest setbacks you're going to have of selling professional, or just a professional in whatever field you're in, is laziness. And when I say that, a lot of you are going to be like, "What? What's he talking about? I'm not lazy, man. I get up and bust my butt every day." Well, you may do it, but are you doing it the right way? Are you busting your butt because you're running around in circles and you're trying to figure it out? Well, I don't know how harder I can work. I think that you and I both understand the old saying, work smarter, not harder. If you're a hamster on a treadmill, you can work your butt off and you're still stuck in the same place. So when I say that, your biggest challenge is avoiding being lazy, I mean mentally lazy, not physically lazy. And of course, those people are out there too, but totally different subject there. We're not going to get into that either. I'm talking about being mentally lazy. I'm talking about your refusal to adapt, your refusal to learn, your refusal to accept new ideas and new ventures, or to expound upon the things that you already know. If you go into sales, or I'm taking sales as a general field tonight, it can be applied to any craft that you have. But if you take your craft and you know what you know, you have no room to grow. Okay? Always allow yourself to grow. It's when you grow your mind, guess what? Your pocketbook will grow too. Your bank account will grow too. And it doesn't mean that you're out here, that's your only motivation. But let's face it, folks. Why do you work? I'm just being a realist. Why do you work? If you don't need a paycheck, then God bless you. You're financially set and you can do whatever you want, I guess. But I think I'm speaking for 99.9% of everybody when I say you work because that's how you earn money. That's how you achieve the things that you want to achieve in life. That's how you obtain your goals that you've set for yourself, is by working hard, but working smart. Listen, if you're doing the same thing you did last year, and I'm not talking about the same job, because I love what I do. Speaking to people and consulting is my passion. So I don't mean if you're doing the same thing you're doing as the year before, you're not getting it. No, when I say that, I mean that if you're doing the same thing that you did the year before, in a mental aspect, if you can't see the fact that you've grown, that you've learned new things, you have new techniques, the fact that your technology, I play around on the technology side of things, constantly. I'm constantly looking for a better way to record the podcast, a better way to communicate, a better way to do this, a better way to do that, and it's part of the learning process.